Recording.
We are indeed live.
Wonderful. Hello, my name is Jen Johans, and I'm a bookseller here at Scottsdale's Poison Pen Bookstore in sunny Arizona. And I'm so excited to be joined by my brilliant friend, Sheila O'Malley, who's one of our best critics and film essayists, historians. She analyzes scenes and acting and moments in movies more beautifully and more insightfully than I think most people. So I love Sheila's writing. You've read her stuff at rogerebert.com and around. She's also written for the Criterion Collection. And she's out with her first book, which is what we're celebrating today, and you can order it from Poison Pen Bookstore. It is Frankenstein, written and directed by Guillermo del Toro. Trying to get it in the frame there. It is a huge book, but it is a stunner, you guys. There are so many pictures and costumes and notes, and Sheila did just the most amazing job. So first of all, welcome, Sheila, and
Thank you
congrats.
so much. Thank you, Jen. It's been so nice. I've been so looking forward to this. It's been a whirlwind. The movie came out in theaters. I think it was originally going to be October 17th, but it really started coming out the next following weekend, and it just started streaming a week ago. So it's been kind of a lot, a lot of like waiting, and then a flurry of activity. So I was really looking forward to this, first of all, because I know you. And I feel,
You're
it just
fun.
feels right. Um,
Mhm.
Also, because this is movie based and it's Frankenstein and it's Guillermo del Toro, so it's
Yeah.
going to be fun to discuss.
Yeah, 100%. And it was kind of kismet too, because I was telling Sheila off air that an episode of my podcast, Watch with Jen, with Patrick Milliken, who most people know from Poison Pen and doing these events, he and I discussed Nightmare Alley. And we did both versions of the movie and also the book. And of course, the new one was by Guillermo del Toro.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. What I was going to ask is, how did you get involved? How did this start?
Um, it's a bit of a mystery. I can make some guesses, but in March of 2024, I got a message from Leah Brown, who was the managing editor of Insight Editions,
Okay.
who is a book imprint that brings out, these behind the scenes, the making of books. It was out of the blue, though. I did not know her. I didn't know, and um, I've never done anything like this before. I didn't know how it all occurred, but she said, I have a project that I think you might be interested in. And once we spoke, and sidebar, Inside Editions has brought out behind the scenes books of, I think,
Yes.
most of Guillermo's films, these beautiful, just sort of all of the art of his collaborations. And she said that I'm just stating the facts that he requested me to do this. He requested
That's
me from,
wonderful.
so, I have never confirmed why. I mean, I have some guesses. I could speculate. I met him, I interviewed him. Um, at Ebert Fest in, I think, 2016 when Crimson Peak opened Ebert Fest. And I had given it, I absolutely was in love with Crimson Peak and
A great
rev
Gothic film.
yes, and reviewed it for the site. And he had mentioned in our interview, that he had been sort of frustrated by how it had been marketed incorrectly as a horror, and therefore a lot of the reviews were kind of um, criticizing it for being what it wasn't trying to be anyway. Meanwhile, I'm talking about like Daphne du Maurier and Jane Eyre, which I felt was what. And I recently, I was like, well, let me go back and read. I never read what I write after I finish it. It's like it's out of my head.
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
went back and read that original review of Crimson Peak, and I compare Guillermo to Mary Shelley. I had no
Oh,
way of doing it
that's amazing.
because I thought, well, this is the Gothic, and it's also there's this quote that it's probably in the book. It's one of her most famous quotes about, um, I love this quote about her coming up with this story.
Uh-huh.
When they were all, she and her boyfriend at the time, I don't think he was her husband yet, and Lord Byron are sitting around. It's a rainy night. It's 1816 or 1817, and they decide to write ghost stories to pass the time, and she has a writer's block. She can't think of anything. She wrote all of this in the preface to the book, which she was a teenager when she wrote it. I just want everyone to realize that. Frankenstein was written by a teenage runaway, basically.
Yes.
And anyway, she says in this that she finally had this almost vision of a created man at the foot of her bed, just standing there. And she felt this shiver of horror. And she realized she knew what she wanted to write about. But in this preface, I'm mentioning this because I quoted this in my Crimson Peak review, saying it reminded me of Guillermo del Toro. So this is why I
Oh,
believe
wow.
that Guillermo probably remembered this. But she said, "What terrifies me will terrify others," which I just think is such a beautiful way to express, first of all, the confidence of an artist that, whatever it is, a musician, a painter, like if this moves me, somebody else out there is also going to
Oh,
feel
yeah.
it. I may just feel obsessed by this one thing, but I understand that. So what terrifies me? So anyway, that's how I think. I never asked why me. That's just my guess. Um,
I
so
agree.
I was very excited because um and also I felt the responsibility of this project just because everybody seems to know that this has been Guillermo's dream project. Frankenstein is his number one, maybe Frankenstein and Pinocchio are his favorite sort of, you know, myths. So that's how it started. I can take you through, I eventually went and joined. So that was March 2024. I got the job. They had just started filming up in Toronto. They were in Toronto for March, April, May, June, yeah, about 6 months. And
Okay.
then they went for the location shoot in Scotland and the UK, which is where I joined up with the shoot in September of 2024. So before that
Incredible.
time, I had months
Yeah.
to, which I'm grateful for now. But,
Mhm.
I read the screenplay, which they sent to me. So I read it over and over and over. It's Guillermo's version of this story. It's an overwhelming um, kind of take on this tale, very personal. Um, Eventually, it took a while, but I was given files and files of like costume sketches. And just because, Jen, you and I have interviewed people, but I've never interviewed people about things that I haven't seen.
Exactly. It was in process. Uh-huh. In
Yeah, so
production.
I'm not giving my interpretation of it or my critical response to it. So I had to really go into these interviews, the initial interviews in Scotland when I was there, like super prepared. I can't waste their time. I'm, interviewing the cinematographer on a shoot day. So I
Yeah.
just need to get, so I went through the script and I just made copious notes of like, okay, well, I need to ask about these different sets or locations for the production designer. I need to talk about, and honestly, and so that was Scotland, the September. And I interviewed all the department heads while I was there. I got to watch a couple days of shooting. I watched the dance rehearsal for the sort of restaurant scene with Victor and Elizabeth. And then for the next 3 or 4 months, I filled in the blanks with everybody else. I spoke to as many of the actors as I could get to. I spoke to the visual effects, sound designer, the editor, um, the composer, the great Alexander Desplat,
Oh
which
my
again,
gosh, I love him.
he was my last interview because the score was like the last thing being done and he didn't want to talk to me, which completely understandably until he had done it, So
Yeah, in case it would have, yes.
yeah,
In,
so we held a spot for him and then he was ready. The generosity of all of these very busy people was very moving to me. It also really speaks to how they all feel about Guillermo because they knew that Guillermo, like these books are a big deal. These books really matter to Guillermo or any artist to sort of highlight the team that they brought together. So
Mhm.
it wasn't like I had to chase people down with my pencil and feeling like I was bothering people. Everybody was just wonderful. So
Yeah, it was more of a journalistic historian style job than your
Yeah,
typical analysis or breakdown of scenes, film reviews. Exactly. And one thing I think we both agree we love about Guillermo del Toro is his championship and support of women, especially women artists, creative artists. He's married to a friend of ours who is another just amazing film
incredible.
writer and essayist, Kim Morgan. They wrote Nightmare Alley together. And also, Guillermo collaborates very well with women, does so frequently. So he says he just sort of instinctively understands. And so he was, the right guy for the job. You brought up Mary Shelley and her background. I loved learning. The book is filled with so much wonderful historical research and detail, chronicling. I think, like you said, you had all those months to
Right.
really kind of dig in. And so I really appreciated that. Some of the things,
Good.
learning and getting a refresher, like, oh yeah, she is the daughter of Mary Wollstonecraft and William Godwin. And what was that like? Your father's a radical atheist philosopher inspired by Rousseau. People were born good, society's evil. And you can see the way that influenced her. So I was wondering
Totally.
thoughts on Shelley. Yeah.
Yeah. That was really fun. So I had already read biographies of her. I love that whole generation, the Romantics, you know. They were like the radical hippies of the 60s or the jazz babies of the 20s, which make
You
that
you made that
analogy.
point in here, and I was like, brilliant. I think you called
Yeah.
it three youth quakes
The
of the
youthquakes where,
20th. Yeah.
generations, and you're gonna, the grown-ups are never gonna like it. They're never gonna be like, oh, the kids are so cool. We think the kids, no, they're gonna be like, this is the downfall of civilization.
Mhm.
Um, but they were a generation that came through. I mean, it was, 40 years of war and revolution. I mean, they came into absolute that sort of generation and they had had it.
Mhm.
They were all, it was very young. Many of them died young. Mary Shelley outlasted them all. Like her
Mhm.
husband drowned um
Yeah, like 4 years after
4 years after. Yep. And you think about just she had so many babies who died when they were together, just the
oh,
the
heartbreaking. Yeah.
difficulty of life. And the things that we could survive now that we couldn't, a fever is going to kill you, but
Yeah.
so I was always very interested, and I just knew because I had done my research on Guillermo as well that he was deeply not even just aware of all of this stuff, he is like a scholar of it. There's a great annotated Frankenstein. It's was invaluable for me because it was she published the book,
Twice.
came out in 1818, and then she edited it, very important edits. Like these are not subtle edits in, I can't remember, maybe 15 years later or something.
Uh,
And
and they gave the credit, like some of it, their theories, like, oh, it was Shelley, or,
you're going
yeah.
to hear a lot of that.
Yeah.
But, she was very kind of pointed on some of the things that she wanted to highlight. Also, she was a teenager when she wrote the original, and maybe she had learned a little bit. Um, so I knew Guillermo knew. Anyway, this annotated Frankenstein has both versions plus all of these like incredible footnotes, and Guillermo wrote the foreword. So I read the foreword, and it was all just, he was deeply embedded in this generation of, you know, I would say the kids who were born in like 1780 or
Yeah.
1790s.
Romantics.
They were going to see, coming out of like waves of revolution, the rise of Napoleon, Europe torn apart, the Industrial Revolution starting. It has a lot of similarities to any other kind of youth movement when there's a ton of people saying, okay, grown-ups, it's time for, I don't think you've done a great job with the resources, and we have some other thoughts about it. And Mary Shelley was very much a part of that, and she was very much her parents' daughter. Even though her mother died in childbirth, she was very aware of her, I mean, revolutionary mother.
Mhm.
And her father, who then really did. I mean, she really was shunned from society
Yeah.
when she ran away with Percy Shelley. Um, and she never really got back in. She never
Yeah.
really um, so she was very familiar with the outcast. She was very familiar with being an outsider. This is even without even mentioning that she's a woman who is the ultimate other, so much so that in Frankenstein, the woman, I mean, woman is so othered that she is either dead or she's removed from the reproductive process, like Victor
Yes.
removes her.
Good
you know,
point.
it, it's very interesting. So anyway, all of that kind of research I knew was going to be present in the film. Well, I wasn't quite sure how. Um, it was it was really fun to finally see it. You know what I mean? After living with it like this for so long. Um, so that research I think helped. I think definitely sort of, and it was fun. And then came I mean, it felt like a Frankenstein monster putting together this book, which was like taking, 30 interview, voice memo things, transcribing them, and then finding a way to kind of tell the narrative of all of these brilliant people, but also not just how they worked separately, but it's about how they all work together. That was
Yes.
the thing that was really important for me when I really sat down to write the book, is I wanted to not have it be a series of monologues, each chapter with one person telling what they did, but how all of them were always talking about each other.
Yeah.
So, like, Tamara Deverell, the production designer, is talking about the color palettes and talking about how that affected Kate's work. And it's, it's like, and I saw it when I was there in Scotland. I saw how this kind of organism is created around Guillermo's vision. Um,
Yeah, it's great watching and learning about how collaborative and how creatives can spark each other and inspire each other. I never thought of that. I'm going to take that motif and do something with that. I think that's magical. I love that your book does celebrate that. And you mentioned this is a passion project for Del Toro. He saw this movie. It was a huge memory in his childhood when he was a kid. I think it was on a Sunday. It's one of those great, compares cinema to church like Martin Scorsese and calls this his most Catholic film. It's very important in his history. The first conversation and the first time he met Oscar Isaac, and they hung out in Toronto because Oscar Isaac does write the foreword for, or the introduction, and Del Toro writes the foreword. He mentions that during their exchanges, all of a sudden he's like, "You have to be my Victor." So yeah,
yeah.
and they blend the autobiographical details of Guillermo and Mary Shelley. So what did he talk about with that?
Right. Well, I mean, I think he said, this is my Fablemans." That was
Yeah,
one of the quotes that he said when I thought, "This is my Fablemans." Like, um, yeah, I mean, I think he said, I'm not sure if it's in here, but that he feels that he shares sort of a DNA with Mary Shelley, that if he could go back in time, she would be like the first person that he would want to seek out and just hang out with. Um, and so, yeah, blending. I mean, it's interesting. I feel like, with something like Nightmare Alley, with something like Frankenstein, it's very well known. Well, Frankenstein is more well known source material than Nightmare Alley, but because of that, there are so many different Frankensteins. There are so many different versions that are already living in our heads, even if we never saw the original 1931 film, even if we never saw.
hmm
So Guillermo's there's a lot of and there was immediately as well when the book first came out, this kind of blending of a misunderstanding of perhaps the message of the book, that
yeah,
almost immediately there were like pirated editions. There were like suddenly people were putting up plays and operas, and it was always this staggering, terrifying creature that everyone wanted to destroy. Mary Shelley was always, it's unavoidable if you read the book that you can tell that the creature has more emotional awareness, emotional sensitivity than Victor. You know,
Yes, absolutely.
he learns faster, he's empathetic, and um, you have moments of that. Uh, Obviously, Boris Karloff is filled with pathos. I mean, you look at him, there's moments where he's looking at the flowers and you just kind of want to weep. It's like you're projecting something onto him. He looks scary, but he's not, kind of thing. But
Mhm.
Guillermo, really, this is what the film is all about,
Yeah.
the loneliness of the outsider and the father-son dynamic, which is present in the book, but not to this explicit degree. You know what I mean? Sort of the cycle of abuse. I mean, in the book, the father is a lovely man.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
that
it's very
tension
different.
isn't there as much. But here it's about abuse, fathers and sons in particular. So,
Yes. And it's a circular narrative, which Del Toro loves.
yeah,
Um, starts on a ship, ends on a ship. It's stories, and
right.
the cycle of abuse. So it's very symbolic. You talked about something that I really hadn't, put into words, but as soon as you mentioned it, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's right. The fact that all of the round windows and the circles are throughout his filmography, it's a motif. I started thinking about Immerse and Shape of Water and all of
Yeah.
that. So it does have his visual standpoint and his visual cues throughout. And I would love to know just more about the production design too.
Gosh, Tamara Deverell is just such a visionary. But they also work with like Guy Davis, who is the concept artist, who is just always working with, he works with sort of every department. Guillermo works with him. He's an incredible artist too. His art in the book is just, I mean, the paintings are just incredible. Um, so yeah, so we're thinking about there's so many locations in this film, massive locations. We have the tower, the lab, there's the creature's cell. Right,
I was
exactly.
writing them. I'm like 112.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Wow.
And when I went into my interview with her in Scotland, of course, I hadn't seen it. I was just going off. I just
Yeah.
took notes from the screenplay. So I'm like, ship, got to know about the ship. You know, I was there in all of the scenes that were filmed in Harlander's house. So when he
Okay.
shows him the
Oh,
table,
wow.
when
Yeah.
he sees William, when he meets Elizabeth for the first time, that location, I think we were there for 3 days. It's called Hospital Field, and it's an
Okay.
old, it was a monastery. Now it's like this kind of cool, like I'd love to go there, like artist residence. You can,
Ooh,
I
go
know,
right there.
it's
Yeah.
amazing. Um, so I was there for that, and then the shoot moved to Edinburgh. So I wasn't in Toronto where I could see all of the sort of built sets,
Yes. No, I understand.
you
But I
know,
love
but
the
just
design.
the inspiration that they took from these location scouts, and oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like she was talking about the creature's cell. This is a perfect example for how I wanted to sort of construct the book. So I was talking, she's talking about that underground cell, and she knew that she wanted vaulted ceilings where they chain up the creature.
Yep.
And she wanted it to be sort of white but mossy tile, and those curved ceilings. And I don't think she was on this particular location scout. Maybe she was, but there was a house from the period in the UK somewhere and had an underground swimming pool. I mean, very ahead of its time, with these vaulted Gothic with white tile that had been, was almost like moldy and not white anymore because it was underground and wet all the time. And it was like perfect. She was like, this is it. This is exactly. And so then that's what that sort of became. And they took these white tiles and just, they aren't white at all. They're like aged. And then there's like moss and stuff all over them. And then when I was talking with Jacob Elordi, I said, so what about your cell? Like, what was that going in there? He said, there were like real cobwebs and moss. He said, I'll never be on a set like that again. Like I didn't have to do anything. So that's how these people work together. Like she had created such a, see, I have goosebumps, like real environment that he felt what the creature felt. There's no sunlight, you know, in literally the scene before his first moment alive, his father, Victor, says, sun is life. He's showing him the sun. And the very next thing he does is lock him away where there's no sun. It's, pretty horrible. Um, but that level of detail you can see throughout. And I keep noticing different things based on my interviews with Tamara of just the level of detail that they got from research too.
Yeah.
Everything kind of has a basis in reality. It's not just um, fantastical, which I think really helps with this story in a way,
Mhm.
because it is obviously it doesn't take place in the real world, but it needs to feel like it does because it's about
Yeah.
things like technology. It was a high tech novel at the time, as
Yes.
Guillermo points that out too. This was a very cutting edge type of novel. It's dealing with technology. It's not this rural, it's a city. It's exploration of kind of concepts that were anatomy and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like, and we know how Guillermo feels about AI as he's been on his press
Yeah.
tour.
I love that. Yeah, he is not afraid to give his opinion.
Yeah.
Like you were talking about Victor's lab, and one thing again you highlight in the book, you mentioned the carving of Medusa and how important of a symbol that is. And it's just this is very steeped in rich literature and all of his influences, just everything coming together. And you mentioned Jacob Elordi. I mean, there have been lots of Frankenstein, Karloff, and Robert De Niro. There's been tons over the years. Jacob Elordi's performance is different. He's more vulnerable, innocent. He was the last cast, you said, and that's really amazing. And it was a suggestion from Kim
Mhm. And
to
Guillermo's daughter.
yes, to watch Saltburn and
Yeah.
Priscilla. They were
Yep.
absolutely right. I should mention that Sheila is one of the foremost experts on Elvis and writes beautifully and needs to write a book on Elvis because I love her work on that. We did an episode of Watch with Jen on Elvis, some of his underrated or less than popular,
Right.
yes, ones that don't get enough attention. So if you love Sheila on Elvis, do look for that and look for her writing too. But I love that you got to talk to
I
somebody who,
know. It
yes,
was
it was
perfect.
meant to be.
It really was.
Yes.
Really was. I loved that he got to do it, and I really admire what he did too, because he knew going in he was not the first choice. Andrew Garfield was
Yeah.
cast, but because of the strike, I think, and things getting pushed back, it just didn't work out. So he was
Oh, it was Garfield. He was attached to another project. My friend was, and same thing. So there must have been some kind of scheduling thing with
everything
him.
got kind of pushed
Yeah.
back, and um so
But
yeah, he was looking for his creature. And they're very different types. And I think there's 20 years between them. Jacob
yeah,
Elordi is 26, 27 at the time that he was filming, which gives a different feeling than
you
having
bet.
to be, I mean, he's a man, he's an
Yeah.
adult,
Mhm.
but he's not a peer of Oscar Isaac in terms of age. I'm just thinking right now of like Kenneth Branagh and Robert De Niro. It's a
Yeah.
very different feeling. De Niro was incredible, of course.
Yes.
Um, but to have a
He's my Elvis.
powerful middle-aged man playing that part as opposed to a younger man who is closer to being a teenager, which is really what we watch the beginning stages of development.
Mhm.
And well, I was rooting for, when I interviewed him, I hadn't seen him. He had wrapped by the time I was there. So I was a little
Okay.
bummed, but I was really rooting for him. I couldn't wait to see, he's clearly talented actor, but I don't think I could be prepared for what
No.
I saw him do. And he was so like just not one on one, but in the Zoom, like so lovely and gentle and smart
Oh,
and
no.
self-deprecating, like everything, and um extreme just I was very touched by how he led with vulnerability. And you wouldn't expect, that guy to be that way, but that is who he is. You know what I mean? He leads with vulnerability, which is just so perfect for the creature. You
Yeah, and
know?
brave as an actor because I think a lot of people want to play into the strength, of course. Yes.
Yeah, or just going and knowing, okay, well, nobody expects me. I mean, he said that. He said, I don't think I'm at the place where people would expect me to have a take on a character like this. So
Yes.
it's a big risk, and I just love
What he did with it, I
I
think.
love it. Yeah, it's he showed everybody what he could do. It's beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful
And
work.
I mean, you can't talk about this movie and Del Toro's films in general without giving some shout outs to the wardrobe and the costuming, makeup. Tiffany and Company, they only lent their jewels out to like three movies before this. This was the fourth movie. It started, of course, with Breakfast at Tiffany's. And for costuming, you had Kate Hawley
Oh,
and Guillermo
genius.
del Toro wrote, Kate Hawley understands operatic score and the storytelling function of wardrobe, the most gifted designer I have ever met. And I agree. Oh my
Oh
goodness.
my gosh. I
Oh,
mean, what? And she comes from like she's done operas and
yeah.
stage, which I think gives her she's talk about bold. It's yeah, and Tiffany.
Mhm.
That was the fun. So I interviewed her. She was so much fun too. And they all just opened their sketchbooks to me. They just were so like, here's, this. Oh my gosh, that one with the feathers. Come
Yeah.
on. I
Yes.
she sort of set up an introduction with Christopher Young, who I'm not going to get his title right, but he was the representative at Tiffany who worked with Kate on the design. So they donated jewels for the film, and they also designed a special. So it was a huge kind of collaboration, which when I initially met with Kate, nobody told me what to do. You know what I'm saying? Nobody said, here, do this. I had to figure it out. And so as I'm talking to Kate, I was like, oh, okay. Because I hadn't seen it. I was like, I feel like I need to talk to the Tiffany guy. It sounds like this is a huge deal
Yes.
without having seen any of it. So Kate was in New York to give a lecture, and so she and I went and met with Christopher at Tiffany, and he too opened his books and just
Oh my gosh.
it's just
So generous.
it was
Yeah.
so generous, and it was such an exciting collaboration because she had sort of picked out some of these not more unique, but things that you wouldn't think of. When you think
Exactly.
of Tiffany, you think of sort of diamonds, elegance, but there were other designers, most of whom were women at like the turn of the century, who had designed these kind of wild, like the scarab beetle
Yeah, the scarab
necklace,
beetle, green
necklace,
tourmaline ring,
necklace
red crucifix. It's very vibrant.
the red crucifix. Um, so there were, sort of extant pieces that they pulled out of the archives, and then things like that red crucifix, which was designed for the film. So anyway, that was one example of like being in the middle of something going, okay, no one is telling me what to do, but I feel like Tiffany, the collaboration should be probably included. Yeah, Kate Hawley. Oh my gosh, so beautiful. And these sort of gauzy, the layers of gauze. I
Uh-huh.
haven't watched the film where I can actually study it, but Kim, Guillermo's wife, is in the wedding scene. She's wearing a veil. You can see her as a guest at the wedding scene, Kim Morgan.
Oh, can you? I love
Yes,
that.
I haven't located her, but I do know that she was like tossed into it and she has a little credit in it. So I have to find her. But yeah, so just absolutely stunning work and so imaginative, like the sort of even just like the funeral and like what the footmen are
Oh
wearing,
my gosh, yes.
like weird. And then like it looks like there's a lot of sort of piping on the jackets that look like rib cages, even though they're just, it's anatomical, a little strange, eerie designs, just beautiful. So yeah.
Yeah. I know. And you did mention, of course, another amazing contributor, Alexander Desplat. But before we get to him, we do have a question. And I agree, it is a good idea. Somebody said, am I the only person who notices Del Toro is obsessed with the color turquoise and aqua? And I know he loves greens. And so, what is it about his color palette for this that you learned?
Yeah, we go into that quite a bit. So, red
Yep.
is probably one of the most important colors in the film. You'll see it, uh, I mean, you see it everywhere, but it's about his mother. His mother is head to toe in these red kind of veils. When she dies, she
Oh my
leaves,
gosh, that's so stunning. Yes.
oh my gosh, and when it's flowing off in the wind
Yes.
like this, and then it's like when she is going off into labor and she's holding her son, she leaves, he has the white shirt, which now has the red handprints on it.
Yes.
Through the rest of the film, he is wearing red gloves, so
Hmm.
it's either blood, you have blood on your hands, or they are actually his mother's gloves.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah, like I hadn't clocked that, but if he's wearing his mother's gloves the entire time that he does this, it gives another level of disturbing, kind of cool.
Yeah.
Um, Another thing is the color white and how to get different. There was a lot of conversation with different departments in the book about, how do you film white? How do you find the different shades of white? And it
Hmm.
is, symbolizes death. So
Yes.
even we're at the wedding and we see everybody in these white, all of the guests are in white. It's eerie. It's a
It is.
little eerie. You're not supposed to wear white to somebody else's wedding, but they didn't get the memo at this wedding. Um, and so there is a feeling like the coffins are white, of his mother and stuff. So I think those are very symbolic, very Catholic, which
Yeah,
Guillermo
that's what I was gonna
obviously
say. Yes.
is. Um,
You know what's I love about that is my friend William Boyle. I was born Catholic too. I mean, I'm not very religious now, but he says you're always Catholic haunted. And I agree with that. And I would call Del Toro's work that for sure.
For
Yes.
sure. Yeah, I mean, even the round windows,
Yes,
Guillermo talks about them
exactly.
like a halo, behind
Mhm.
people, or the host, whatever.
Yes.
Um,
Father son that, with the
yeah,
Frankenstein. Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. In terms of the colors, I think it was the producer who I must mention, J. Miles Dale, who
Okay.
he was just so instrumental in getting everybody. He just emailed everybody. The second I arrived in Scotland, he was like, let me just email everybody and tell them to make time in their schedule. And because he's J. Miles
Oh,
Dale, they all did. He was incredible. But I interviewed him as well, and he said, there's not a color on screen that hasn't been agreed to by everybody. It's that
yeah.
controlled. So you're not seeing, just trying to think, there's some greens, but it's really that underwater mottled
Yes.
green.
Yeah.
It's not like the hills are alive with the sound of, I mean, so yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting to track the color red when you see the film. Like Oscar will be wearing a Oscar Victor will be wearing like a red velvet jacket. Nothing else is red, but he's sort of carrying that kind of with him. The angel that he sees in his nightmares, or that he prays to, is red. It's kind of a beautiful. I'm sure there's way more there than I'm
Oh
picking up
no, you're
now,
fine.
but those are the first that I'm thinking of.
Yeah, and as far as the collaborations between the departments go, I always find it so true and so interesting to see the way that, yeah, they do spark each other. Allison Anders tells a really great story about making gas food lodging
Love
and the
that.
kitchen. She said the designer for the kitchen was like, okay, how long had they been married? Did a man live in this place? Whatever. And it thought all of her son, like at one time, she might have thrown a plate of eggs at the wall and so now there's a little dent, and she like came up with that. And it's not in the film, but it is because everybody
Yes.
mindset. Yeah.
Love it. Yes.
Yeah,
That's so cool.
so I love that about this one. And I think you did a really great job of kind of marrying the different departments and showing how much they just have genuine affection for not only Del Toro, but each other.
So
And Steph,
cool. It was so inspiring, I have to say, yeah. And Mike
yeah,
Hill, who designed the creature and basically built the prosthetics that were all over Jacob, and also the little prosthetics on Mia Goth's face for when she plays the mother.
yeah,
Um,
she plays two characters, if you're
yeah, sort of,
wondering.
again, he's wearing the gloves. He's got daddy issues and mommy issues.
Mommy issues.
Yeah. But Mike Hill's contribution, he's just an absolute genius as well, I think. Yeah,
Yeah. And
he,
does plot. Now let's
oh
talk about,
yes,
oh my
yes.
gosh. I have loved his music
Oh gosh.
forever. I mean, one of my favorite scores to write to for a while was The Painted Veil, which nobody talks about that score.
Mhm.
Just yeah, I love his work. So I want to know, what was that like? That was the last person you interviewed,
I was the
right?
last person, and he had maybe 20 minutes to give me.
Okay.
That was it. And so I just went in there like, boom, I gotta just, and of course I hadn't heard it either though. It's not like he sent
Oh
me a
no.
sample.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? The movie wasn't even out yet.
Okay.
Um, but he needed to be done with the score in order to talk to me. So there was some beautiful, I also found some interesting, he and Guillermo did a little panel at the Cannes Film Festival this past year and talked about music and film. So I did get a lot of nice
Oh,
perspective
good,
on
good.
that. So Guillermo said something like, we aren't done until I'm weeping in his studio, so he'll go to, um, Paris and, just go there every day and they'll listen. It's like such an interesting, like one person's a musician, one's not, one's interpreting what you're saying and coming up with it. There's a great variety in the score, I think, in the Frankenstein score. Like there's this
There
almost
is.
like comical when Victor is trying to
Yes,
be
we're
like a
talking.
boyfriend of his brother's girl. There's like a there's like a little jaunty,
Yeah,
mischievous sound. And then there's this, very exciting but upsetting big
yeah,
sounds when the creature is chasing him. Um,
yeah. And
he
it's
talked
great.
a lot about, I'm sorry, but he talked a lot about like choosing things because it just feels right.
Yeah,
Like many great artists, they can't exactly tell you why they do what they do. Like I think he said something like, "Well, I just picked that key because it's the right key." And
yep.
his musicians will often be like, "Did you have to pick the key with so many sharps and flats?" Almost like kidding around. He's like, "Well, that one is the right one. It has the right sound." I thought that was so interesting. He was wonderful to talk to. It was great to finally hear what he had been, to hear the score.
Yes, I think composers, that art form, I am just endlessly fascinated. I think one of my favorite things I learned was Ennio Morricone could not listen to music in his house. His sons, I went to the premiere of the documentary about him that Giuseppe Tornatore made, and one of the sons introduced it and said, yeah, he was a good father, but we could not listen to music in the house because it would just like affect him too much.
Oh,
And you
yeah.
mentioned, it's not over until I'm weeping. And it reminded me recently, I was reading Ong Lee was talking about Sense and Sensibility and saying when he breaks a heart, he wants it to be broken for 2 months. So it's like all of these departments working together. Yes.
Wow. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And then as far as the place in Del Toro's films, and do you have other favorites you want to talk about his movies and his themes and any of the motifs that run through?
I mean, I think for me, I saw Pan's Labyrinth in the
Yeah.
theater, and it has talk about, you're weeping for 2 weeks or whatever. I
Yes.
still, it was years before I saw it again, but it is in my head
Mhm.
forever.
Yep.
Um, like I said, I think Crimson Peak, for whatever reason, Crimson Peak, I think it kind of touched that romantic, literally like the generation. Um, chord. It was just filled with that sort of the things that that generation was obsessed with, like women behind the walls or ghost stories or the supernatural and sort of the natural. I loved the set design of that, the costumes, which
Oh my gosh.
Kate
Yeah.
Hawley did the costumes in Crimson Peak as well. Um, and Nightmare Alley blew me away.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the piece that I wrote about it, I think it was just on my site or maybe it was just on Facebook. I still to this like Bradley, that final moment with Bradley Cooper where the camera
Oh my
is,
gosh.
I,
Yeah.
it's such brilliant acting.
Yep.
I, I am blown away by it. I can't wait to, I actually haven't seen it. I haven't seen it, I think, since it came out, but it is again burned into my brain. It's,
What was
he-
crazy for me with that is I had the screeners back to back in my house for award season voting, which Sheila and I do. And so I had just watched Nightmare Alley and then went right to Licorice Pizza. And I had no idea he was like in there a little. And all of a sudden, wow, this is an actor. Yes. Because I love him in Licorice Pizza. Oh my gosh.
he was my old classmate. I went to grad school with
No
him.
way. For real?
Yeah.
Where?
Actor studio at the
Oh,
New
okay.
School
Yes.
back in the day.
Yeah,
And
that's another thing Sheila does. We should say you're a hell of
I
an
mean, I
actor.
don't anymore, but
Yes.
I mean, he was the year behind me, but we were, you know, it's a small-ish program, so we were
Yeah,
in
you know each
classes
other.
together. I think I took an Alexander technique class with him. So he's my classmate. And then to see, I was like, unbelievable, unbelievable.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, what actors can do in these roles. And I think, like you were saying with Jacob Elordi, he doesn't have to do, he's on that set and they've done it so well. You're taking it like the eggs against the wall, like you don't see it, but you feel it.
yeah.
Yes. I was going to ask you, what was your book tour like? What do you have next? What is next for you with this?
I mean, I haven't been doing much actually. Not to sound,
Need a break after all that research. Yes.
I did, yeah. So the movie came out. I went to the premiere in New York, which was so fun, hosted by Tiffany, and they had their whole storefront had like lightning bolts coming through the
Oh, I saw
windows,
that.
and they
Thomas
did
Lafley posted
the
something with all those.
score.
Oh my gosh.
It was incredible. I got to talk to Jacob in person, which was really fun because I had interviewed him over Zoom. Um, he was so nice, so I get to actually see some of these people.
Yeah.
And then so that happened whenever that was. Oh gosh, where does the time go? I have no idea. But my first real event was a sort of book signing event at the Barnes and Noble, basically near my house, where I've been going
Oh,
Christmas
that's so
shopping.
cool.
So that was really fun. And um, I've done a couple podcast interviews and a couple of, hopefully, the Barnes and Noble near my house wants to have me and Judith Swift, who was the chairperson of the theater department when I was there as an undergrad at URI. So
Okay.
way back in the day, she did the sort of conversation with me about and so and we sold out. I mean, everybody bought, they bought their entire stash of Frankenstein books.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So they're reordering some. So maybe we'll do some more in December to sell the book.
Perfect
And
holiday gift giving. Yeah.
absolutely. And I'm sure Barnes and Noble will have some nice sales on it, on their exclusive version as well.
Okay.
So it's been really fun. It's been really fun, and it's been great to see. I think I've seen the movie in the theater maybe two or three times now with different groups of people. It's been kind of fun to I'm kind of letting it go. I'm in the process of kind of moving on to whatever is next, which I don't
Yeah.
know what it
Okay.
is. I just went,
Elvis book.
yeah, I just went on a little retreat with
Oh, yeah. You need it.
my
Yeah.
dearest friends, and it was all kind of about the work that we want to be doing. And I think for now, I'm just enjoying that this is out.
Yes,
I'm
this is
it's
the
almost,
moment.
let's see, I was hired in March of 2024, so we're coming up on 2 years of,
Of work.
Frankenstein being always there.
Yes.
And thank God I love the source material, and thank God I love Guillermo. It would be very difficult to live with something for 2 years if you weren't interested in
Yes.
it. This to me felt it was consistently interesting to be even if I had nothing I could work on specifically, I was like, well, okay, I'll just, I don't know, read her husband's letters again about, there's always something.
Yes,
And
yes.
that part of that research part of it, digging into the world of the woman who wrote this incredible book, um, was so gratifying too. This is just a final side note, is that I decided I was like, I feel like that's probably Guillermo. That is important information, I believe, for this book. It's not just about, you know,
Yeah, it is.
I
Yep.
believe that what's going on with Mary Shelley and why Guillermo wants to do it and what is happening is important for the book. I don't know
Yeah.
why I thought nobody would want to hear it, or that the people that would be like,
Some of
why is
my
there a
favorite parts.
5-page chapter about the romantics? I was like, well, and I had none of that. They weren't like that at all.
That's good.
So I'm really happy that that's the case, because this book too is not just any book. It means a lot to people. Guillermo's not
Yeah,
the only one who this book means a lot to. And
it's a classic.
yeah, and it kind of created a genre, and it's one of our oldest monsters in terms, like, everybody, even if you haven't read the book, you have an image in your mind of what this monster looks like. And, an 18-year-old girl wrote it over 200 years ago. It's
That's just
incredible.
amazing. Yes,
It's
like you said,
incredible.
Page Runaway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so fascinating. And all the different versions, of course, I'm hoping to get you and possibly Walter Chaw back on Watch
Yes.
with Jen to
Would love
discuss a
it.
couple of your favorite adaptations, because I always have the best time talking about movies with you as well.
I know, and
And you,
the Maggie Gyllenhaal's Bride is coming out.
oh my gosh, we should wait for that. And then,
It's
yeah,
like a Frankenstein fall for sure. And
yeah, something was in the air with that. And then wasn't there like
yeah,
a Lisa Frankenstein or something recently
yes,
too?
I'm telling it's just that kind of source material. It's going to
Yeah,
always be with us, and I think that's kind of beautiful. I really do.
yes.
It's it will be relevant to every generation, because every generation is going to be worried about the kind of technological developments that are going on around them, and how can we keep our humanity while that's happening.
That's a beautiful note to end on. I think it's a timeless tale, and I love your chronicle of how this movie came about. And so I just want to thank you so much for doing this. It's always such a pleasure. And for congratulations on your beautiful book, which you can order from Poison Pen Bookstore online. We ship everywhere. And so we can be your local bookstore wherever. Please shop independent as well. And Sheila, just you're the best, and I
Thank
wish
you,
you
Jen.
well on what is next for you. You
Thank you,
take care.
Jen. This was
Thank
so
you.
fun.
It was. Bye bye.
Bye.